you can just stand in one place and just use your arms and shoulders to do all your twisting. What I'm going to do, you're going to need to back that camera up because I am going to do a little bit of a run around like this. This one, so one of these I'm going to twist really, really tight, and one of them not so tight. We'll try this one on a tighter twist. Now, the downside to this method is you need to have enough clearance around your vise to get all the way around it. You have to make sure you don't let yourself get dizzy walking in a circle. And the big one is you have to make sure your twisting wrench doesn't slip off the workpiece. And if you're wearing short sleeves like I was the day that happened, brush against that hot steel and end up with a rope-looking burn on your arm. The horizontal method avoids that particular hazard. This one, we're going to twist. We're shooting for about 45 degrees to the axis of the bar. For work like this, it is really quite nice to have longer heats. The forge I have at home is much more like the one that is in the back corner behind our work area today. And it's really good for this kind of stuff. I still can't heat and twist the entire length of a bar typically all at once, but I can do quite a bit. I would say that on the average I probably need something like 4 to 5 heats to fully twist a bar that length. Because I will usually spend a little extra time right on the very ends and take a short heat right on the end and try to get my twist all the way up to the toggle. So that takes a little extra time, but it makes for a little bit more usable material. Questions? Sure.
I noticed you rocking the tongs.
Rocking the tongs on the dies. Yes. Okay, so did everybody hear what he said? Kind of doing this. The reason is because when the dies come down, you create a shallow little lip, where you've already hit. And so you need to get up over that so you can keep going. So I'll often lift just a little bit. That's the only real reason to do that. Yeah. Sometimes your work gets out of level and then you're kind of bouncing around and you got to bring it back in, and it gets kind of starts to get away from you. But that's not really what was happening there. I thought I saw another hand with a question. Yes?
I just need you to repeat that was anvil, hard alloy 58, right?
Yep, hard alloy 58. It's a Hobart product. And in their procedure that they sent me, they recommend actually 2 different products if you're dealing with a wrought iron anvil and you're missing, say you're missing like a corner of the face or something like that. They have a product called hard alloy 38, which is would be described by fabricators or welders as what's called a build-up rod. It is not a very hard material, but it's intended to be an intermediate layer between a very soft material and then a harder cap layer. So if you were repairing a wrought iron anvil, and especially if you had a lot of damage to the anvil, let's say somebody had gotten into it with a torch or something and you had a lot of metal to replace, you would use that build-up material and then you would just have your working surface. Typically the last 2 layers would be the harder product. And if you're going to use those products, you definitely need to do preheating and post-heating, otherwise you'll end up with cracks in the cap layer or in the anvil face where the weld deposit meets the existing face. So if this were to really, and this is actually staying pretty straight, but if it were to bend and get all kind of really out of alignment, I might stop and straighten it because it makes later twisting easier to do. But it doesn't really hurt the part to have to do something like that. I have found that I really, really like the style of tongs that I'm using right now for this job because I can grab my work pieces both at the end and anywhere along the mid-length of the bar that I need to. So especially when you're going to flip end for end, it's really easy to do that. You don't have to pick up another pair of tongs. So back to my comments about tongs earlier in the day, you know, that's a convenience feature that I find valuable. So if I see a pair of tongs, these happen to be the Off-Center brand, which aren't actually manufactured anymore, but there are some similar styles. I can do this and come right back into the furnace. And so for me, tongs like this are really, really valuable in my shop. Well, versatility, I think, is really kind of the concept I'm addressing right now. I'm not quite done, but I do like to have my flats on my ends in alignment when I am done before I go to the next operation. We're not quite ready for that. We're going to try to get a little bit more twisting on the very ends and friendly wire. Get a little more twisting on the ends before we move to the next step. Yeah. Okay. I think that got pinched a little bit. Oh, okay. Right, everybody still can hear me okay after that little technical mishap? I don't know, does everybody have a twisting wrench like this? If you don't have one, and you do any sort of twisting at all, I highly recommend that. I have a couple different sizes. Some of the work that I do is much larger than this. The biggest piece of mokume that I ever needed to twist was a 2-inch octagon, which was kind of a bear. And I've done some smaller, like 1.5 inches. The last time I did 1.5 inches, I had my son come out and help me. My son is 16 years old and he's 6'7" without his shoes on. And some of you guys know Josiah. He's a super, super nice young man. I have a longer handle twisting wrench. It's the same style, but the handle's like that. And when we have a big job like that to do, we'll slide a pipe over one end, and then we can walk around the vise and get the job done. I recently acquired an actual twisting machine. It's actually a really, really old pipe threader, old flat belt drive pipe threader that a previous blacksmith had converted into a twisting machine, and I we'll be using that in the future for those larger pieces. I actually ran a job like this one on it earlier in the year. It worked pretty good. I need to fine tune it a little bit, but it did a nice job. So I'm looking forward to actually having that, because as much as I like having my son help me in the shop, he won't be there forever. Yes. Yes. Only if you overheat it. So if you've got good control and you know you're comfortable with that technique, I think it would work just fine. I'm not that confident in my own ability to do it that way. I'm more comfortable with the forge technique, so that's the method that I use. But I think it would work just fine that other way now. I usually have enough pieces going. Like I might have, so my furnace is, this is 18 inches across the front, 24 inches deep, and 6 inches tall on those are the inside dimensions. And I've got a nice lip on the front. So what I'll do when I have a job like this is I will set up 8 or 10 pieces, maybe like 4 that need twisting along the mid-length, and another 4 or 5 where I'm working on the ends. And I can just jump back and forth between the pieces all afternoon and just twist and twist and twist. Which is great from a productivity perspective. But if you have 60 of those that you need to do, you are definitely running production. I don't know how many of you have done that type of forge work. But that's quite different from just kind of going out and making a hook now and then or something of that sort. A job like that one, that's a 60-piece job for me, will take me, if it's like what we're doing here with twisting and something and then subsequent flattening out into those little flat sections that I talked about earlier, a 60-piece job is probably going to run something on the order of like 22 hours of shop time. So you are definitely, and that's, oh, now see, that was too hot. You all see how that squeezed, right? So I'm just going to stop for a minute. I'm not going to do anything with it. I'm going to just let that cool off. That was right on the very end, which is going to be discarded anyway, so kind of insulated, a little bit there. We'll just let that cool for a minute, and then we'll finish our twist. So I can probably right underneath the burner and let it be in the furnace just a little too long.
Metal had a shine to it.
Yes, the metal had a little bit of a shine to it. That is a visual indicator that I sometimes look for, is that it now starts to look shiny or wet. And it's not molten yet, but it's really close. And so we definitely don't, that if I had noticed that like you did, I probably would have waited 30 seconds or something before I put that in the vise, but I didn't see it. So we're pretty good out to that end. We're going to go back to this end and try to tighten that up just a little bit. I'm going to hold this one here. Just need to, the one on the left-hand side, we're twisting tighter, but again, I'm trying to get right out to the end. So this one on the left with the quite tight twist, the end application for this one will be little beads. So I'll finish the twist to make it as tight as I think is kind of safe to do and as uniform as we can. I'll just make it straight. I won't do anything else to it. I'll just leave it as is. And then what Mike will do when he receives it, he'll trim it and he'll machine it round. And then he has customers who will buy that from him and make decorative beads for like lanyard beads for knives or other things. But sometimes they just make beads because they like having pretty things to have in their pockets. So that's the end application excuse me, for this one. The other one will flatten out so you can see what that looks like. And a typical application for one of those flattened sections would be handles for a high-end pocket knife. So you'd have a Mokane handle, and then quite often you'd have a Damascus blade, and maybe some other decoration and such. So that needs a little bit. Now, you might go, hey, can you get it too cold and twist it off? Yes, you can. You can absolutely do that, which is always kind of frustrating. So you have to be conscientious about that. I want to try to go just a little bit tighter. I'm nice and tight right here, and I'm a little bit looser. Just a few more revolutions over that length. I think will get me what I want. So it's not quite so obvious with the pieces that are on the auction table, but Mokume you can get some pretty neat colors out of it. It is, copper-based material, so it will respond to different chemical patinas, just like other copper alloys would. And so the folks who are quite proficient in doing the finish work on this material will use it. And I can't tell you all the things that they use, although they're pretty open about it. If you happen to join some of the Facebook forums or Facebook groups where they discuss this. But they are able to get really, really neat contrasted colors, and sometimes you'll see the speckles of the individual grains. If they're some of the grains are relatively large, and with the correct etching techniques, you can make those kind of pop out. So as you rotate the piece in the light, you'll see sparkles in some of the layers and things like that. It's really gorgeous. Now you probably won't see that on the pieces on the table because I think 3 of them are just plain finished machined with no other work done, and then the little piece that's like a paperweight, I think that one was just heated in an oven to give it a heat patina. And that's another way that you can get some interesting colors. I found that I can get a subtle coloration if I finish my pieces, so I'll make maybe occasionally like a bracelet or a bookmark or something from a little piece of scrap, and then polish it, clean it, and then wash it with liquid dish soap. And there's enough of a chemical reaction in the dish soap that I get a little bit of a contrasting color. It's not real sharp, and I'm sure there are better, more vibrant ways to get that. But it's worked for me. I was going to talk about another thing related to temperature on Mokume. So we were talking about how the bonding happens, with the stack under pressure at elevated temperature. And that makes everything stick together. One of the things that's happened to me on a couple of occasions is I'm forging along, and I'm working at a pretty high temperature because I can get more work done when things are hotter and so forth, just like we can with steel. And I finished the piece. There's no evidence of any metal squirting out like I had over here. And then Mike gets them, he machines them, and he'll call me and say, how come one of the colors is missing from this billet? Like, what are you talking about? I didn't do anything to it, right? Well, what he was seeing was that he had, in that particular case, he had 3 different materials, just like we have here. And some of the operations I had done were at a high enough temperature, and the pieces were at that temperature long enough that some of the metals started to diffuse into the other metals. And the layers were so thin by that point in the process, it didn't take all that long. And I didn't know that was happening. I couldn't see it happening. And I didn't see any evidence of melting, so I thought that everything was fine. So now I have that as a boundary condition for the work, to be careful not to go so hot that I end up with unwanted diffusion of material in those layers. And that's what I ended up doing at that time. I rebuilt my furnace and I put some thermocouples in it, so I could have better monitoring of that. And that was really helpful. The thermocouples don't really work so well anymore, they need to be replaced, but it worked well enough for me to get a pretty good visual idea of the colors I needed to be paying attention to so that I wouldn't have that happen. Okay, so this piece, we are going to flatten back down to make the flat bar. So that's gonna go back in the furnace. Now I've got my two flats in the same plane. That's just a personal preference. Sometimes it doesn't work out that way for one reason or another. It doesn't ruin the job or anything like that. It's just something I like to do. And this one here is almost done. And what we'll do, so one of the interesting things about this material is it does